Everybody heard the charity case line and decided the story was finished. Grandma said it. The son answered with silence. The timeline clipped it, laughed for a day, and scrolled on. File closed, supposedly. Nah. 3 days later, the so-called charity case opened her camera from a kitchen, 21 weeks pregnant, working through a plate of watermelon, edges out of line by her own admission, and proceeded to hand Blueface, mother, the worst 30 seconds of her streaming career. No tears. No raised voice. Just a read, so clean the chat audibly gasped. That's the clip the headlines walked straight past. And let's be honest about why they walked past it, because that's a story too. The charity case clip was loud, short, and cruel. It fits in a 15-second repost. It needs no context, and it flatters the audience's existing picture of this family. The response clip is none of those things. It's long. It's calm. It requires you to know who said what, in what order, on which stream, and why the word charity was already loaded before it got returned to sender. Outrage travels at the speed of a caption. Rebuttals travel at the speed of comprehension. So the first clip got 1 million views, and the second one got buried under the first one's algorithmic shadow, which is exactly how this family likes it, and exactly why we're doing this the slow way. Because slow is where the receipts live. If you've followed this ecosystem for any length of time, and per the relationship timelines compiled by Complex and the Shade Room, this family has been generating public chapters for years. Through the music, the reality shows, the arrests, the reconciliations, the breakups, the reunions, you already know the pattern. The loudest version of any event is almost never the most accurate one. The accurate version shows up 3 days later, from a kitchen, holding watermelon, real quick, before the paperwork comes out. If breakdowns like this are your speed, slide a like on this, subscribe, and tap the bell. This one travels further than the clip did. Set the frame. August 21st, 2026. Rela Baybee went live to finally address the charity case. Label Karlissa Saffold hung on her unborn daughter during a phone call with Blueface, a call that wound up broadcast on stream. On it, Karlissa told her son the baby was your charity case, and that she wanted nothing to do with it. Blueface's contribution was a flat, repeated, "I don't know anything about that." Rela is 21 weeks along. Due date locked at December 29th. What she said back, sandwiched between cravings, a hernia demonstration nobody requested, and her mama walking through the kitchen, quietly redrew the power map of this entire family. Now, before we touch a single quote, notice the stage itself. Not a podcast. Not a sit-down with a friendly page. Not a statement typed in notes with the serif font of institutional regret. A kitchen. Her kitchen. Her mother's kitchen, actually. A detail that matters more than it looks, because the single most recurring visual of this entire saga is Karlissa on camera, in her own home, controlling her own frame, on her own network. Rela answering from a family kitchen isn't an accident of setting. It's a mirror. She took the format the other side invented, and ran it back at 1/5 of the production value with 10 times the payload. No ring light. No co-host. No run of show. Just a woman, a fruit plate, and a chat full of people who came expecting tears and got a deposition instead. And the admission tucked into the open. Edges out of line by her own admission. Clock that too. She told on herself before the comments could. That's a veteran move. And it's the first clue of the night that you're not watching someone new to this. People who are losing control of a narrative hide their flaws. People who are managing a narrative disclose them first, on their own terms, so there's nothing left to expose. She opened the stream by confiscating every cheap shot in the building. Then she went to work. Start with the joke that wasn't a joke. Mid-live, half-laughing, she floated the running theory that babies come out looking like whoever's been stressing the mother. She gonna come out looking just like her dad. Maybe my mama, because my mama been irritating me a lot. Cute. But clock what she did there. She put the father's face on the baby in the same breath as the woman currently on her nerves. That's not nursery talk. That's an alignment chart. The internet keeps a running gag about babies arriving as little portraits of whoever stressed the mother out. And she just filed the father under that heading without a flicker in her voice. Everybody laughed. The laugh covered the reveal. Here's the thing about humor in this ecosystem. It's the only channel that isn't litigated. Everything else this family says gets clipped, transcribed, fact-checked, and weaponized within the hour. But a joke gets a pass. A joke is legally and socially unserious, which means a joke is the only vehicle that can deliver a serious claim without triggering the defenses. She knows that. Watch how she uses it all night. Every time she approaches the third rail, she approaches it smiling, and by the time the chat finishes laughing, the claim is already on the record, unchallenged, because nobody litigates a punchline. And there's a second layer under this one. The folk theory she cited, baby looks like whoever stressed the mother, is usually deployed by women as a complaint about the father. She inverted it. She listed the father's face first, neutrally, almost sweetly, and only then filed her own mother under stress. Which means in her hierarchy of pressure, the man who hasn't claimed the baby ranked below her own mama's kitchen irritation. Either that's genuine peace, or that's the most elegant demotion ever delivered on a live stream. Keep both readings in your pocket. The night will tell you which one fits. Then came the closest thing to a direct address Blueface has gotten from her in months. No tag, no name, just a door left open in the dark. If you want to be in your daughter's life, you can be in your daughter's life. If you want to abandon your child, your bloodline, that's on you. But nobody told you to do that. Read it again. There's no anger in it. That's the scary part. Anger negotiates. Resignation doesn't. And notice the grammar she chose. Your bloodline. She didn't say our baby. She handed him the entire lineage, like it was already his problem to carry. Quietly. That might be the heaviest sentence of the night. Let's pull that grammar apart one more notch, because it earns it. If you want to be in your daughter's life, you can be. That's not a plea. A plea would be, please be in her life. This is a permission statement. She's announcing that the door she controls is open, which quietly establishes that she controls the door. Then, if you want to abandon your child, your bloodline, that's on you. Possessive, 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 3 in a row, all his. In one sentence, she transferred full legal, moral, and narrative ownership of the abandonment, preemptively, before any abandonment has technically completed. And then the closer. But nobody told you to do that. That's the sentence a lawyer would admire. It forecloses the only defense available to him. The claim that he was pushed, pressured, trapped, or managed into distance. She went on the record, publicly, months before any court could conceivably be involved, stating that no instruction was ever given. If this ever gets read back in a proceeding, and in this family, everything eventually gets read back somewhere, that's not a vlog quote. That's Exhibit A. The headline moment, though, was the charity case rebuttal, and she didn't even sit up straight for it. It's so funny how somebody trying to call somebody a charity case, but they went straight to the shelter and picked up a charity case. Like, please try again. Wild. The chat gasped so hard you could hear it through the screen. Because she didn't just reject the label, she returned it to sender with interest, aimed at Karlissa's own household. And she did it with a smirk, mid-snack, like she was commenting on a parking spot. That composure is information. Now, we're not going to litigate who the shelter line points at. And we're not going to pretend we don't all understand the reference the chat understood. What matters structurally is this. Karlissa's moral authority in this story rests entirely on her self-presentation as the rescuer. The one who steps in. The one who takes in. The one who saves the people her son leaves behind. That brand has been built in public, on camera, for years. And what Rela did in one sentence was point out that the rescuer brand and the charity insult cannot coexist. You cannot monetize your own history of taking people in and then sneer at someone else as a charity case. One of those has to go. She didn't argue the point. She just set the two facts next to each other and said, please try again. Which is why the chat gasped. The audience didn't gasp at the insult. They gasped at the audit. And the composure. Let's not skip past it, because composure is the rarest currency in this economy. This family runs on escalation. Every major storyline in the timeline's complex and the shade room have compiled follows the same physics. Provocation, explosion, clip, apology, reunion, repeat. That's the content cycle. It's profitable precisely because it's volatile. A woman who responds to the cruelest line of the year with a smirk and a fruit plate is breaking the cycle's physics. She is refusing to generate the explosion the format needs. And if you're the network on the other side of the story, a subject who won't escalate is a genuine business problem, because calm doesn't clip. Or rather, it didn't used to. This one clipped just fine. That's the part that should worry the other side. Buried under all that, the most boring-sounding line of the night might be the most important one. My exact due date is December 29th, guys. It's not going to change. Flat delivery. Zero drama. Keep that in your pocket. We're coming back to it. Because in a story where every other detail gets disputed, one date staying identical for months is a whole character witness. Let's actually run that audit, because nobody else has. Since this pregnancy entered public knowledge, announced by Rela herself on live at roughly 8 weeks, per the reporting around the announcement, virtually every adjacent fact has been contested. Who knew first? Who claimed what? Whether the father was informed? Whether the belly was real? A claim this camp has reportedly spent months circulating. Every single one of those questions has shifted, evolved, or been revised by somebody at some point. The due date hasn't. December 29th in the spring. December 29th in the summer. December 29th on August 21st. Medical dates are not vibes. They're computed off ultrasounds and last known timelines, and they don't survive contact with fabrication, because fabrication drifts. People inventing a pregnancy slip on the math eventually. The weeks stop matching the belly. The trimester stops matching the announcement date. Hers has never slipped once. In a story where every other party's version has a revision history, the woman with the unchanged date is functionally the only witness whose testimony has never needed a correction. Write that down. It matters later in the legal section, and it matters a lot. And when the conversation drifted to the hate she's been catching since the announcement, she shrugged the whole thing off with, "All I did is get pregnant, and all the haters just rolled in. All you know is clips and the internet." Okay, that's a woman who has read every comment and chosen indifference. Allegedly. And let's be precise about what that indifference costs and buys. All you know is clips and the internet is not a defensive statement, it's a jurisdictional one. She's declaring that the audience's information environment is incomplete, which is true and checkable. The audience knows the clips, the reposts, the commentary channels, the aggregation pages. She knows the phone calls, the text threads, the hospital visits, the conversations that never got streamed. One side of this dispute is playing with the full deck. The other side, us, is playing with whatever the algorithm dealt. She's not asking for sympathy with that line. She's reminding everyone in the building, including, one suspects, specific viewers with last names, that the public record and the actual record are two different files, and she holds the second one. People without receipts don't talk like that. People without receipts beg you to believe the clips. Now put it in order, because order is where this stops being gossip and starts being math. Blueface, Jonathan Jamal Porter, caught a 4-year sentence in August 2024 for a probation violation and ended up serving 21 months before walking out on November 2nd, 2025. He came home to a cleaned-up image and a sit-down with Big Boy built around growth and fatherhood. Pause on that November to now stretch, because the shape of it matters. Per XXL's reporting, the sentence was 4 years, the time served was 21 months, and the release landed November 2nd, 2025, which means the version of Blueface that walked out was a man with a very specific economic problem. He'd been off the board for almost 2 years. In streaming-era music economics, 2 years is a geological epoch. Catalogs decay, algorithms forget, features dry up, and the audience you had gets redistributed to whoever stayed visible. And here's the connective tissue nobody says out loud. The people who stayed visible during those 21 months were the women of this family. The cameras never stopped. The network never went dark. So when he came home, he didn't come home to a career waiting in cold storage. He came home to a content operation that had been running without him, starring his mother, fueled by his relationships, and monetizing his name. That's the economy he re-entered. Keep it in mind every time you ask why nobody in this family ever seems to want the cameras off. The cameras are the family business now. He was the product. Then he was the inmate. Now he's the returning franchise player, and franchises get managed. And the big boy sit-down growth, fatherhood, the cleaned-up image. Watch it again with that economy in view. That interview wasn't a confession, it was a relaunch. Growth is the product being sold in the post-release era, and fatherhood was presented as the proof of growth, which makes what happened next not just personally ugly, but commercially incoherent. The man whose redemption arc was built on fatherhood spent the following months declining to claim an actual daughter. The brand said one thing. The phone call said, "I don't know anything about that." Somebody was going to have to reconcile those two tapes eventually. It just turned out to be a woman with a watermelon plate who did it first. A few months later, Rela announced a pregnancy, said it herself on live at about 8 weeks. And here's the detail that aged like prophecy. While Blueface still hadn't claimed the child, his mother had already linked up with Rela and claimed the baby. Run that sequence again, slowly. The grandmother onboarded the pregnancy before the father acknowledged it. In most families, that's a sweet anecdote. In this one, it's an org chart. Let's define our terms, because onboarded is doing real work in that sentence. In a normal family, a grandmother's early involvement is emotional logistics, excitement, advice, a crib, casserole. In this family, involvement is infrastructure. Who gets a scene? Who gets a stream appearance? Who gets a phone call on camera versus off? Who gets introduced to the audience, and in what frame? When Karlissa linked with Rela and claimed the baby before her son said a word, she wasn't just being a grandmother. She was establishing channel ownership. First contact. First framing. First claim. Whoever introduces a character to this audience owns that character's opening arc. And the opening arc is nearly impossible to retcon, because the audience's first impression calcifies into the Wikipedia version of events. Karlissa has been in this game long enough to know that instinctively. Whether she did it lovingly or strategically isn't even the right question. In a family where love is broadcast, the two are indistinguishable by design. That's not cynicism. That's the business model working as intended. Due date arithmetic puts conception somewhere around early April, roughly 5 months after the release. So the timeline isn't random woman appears out of nowhere. It's man comes home, reconnects, creates a situation, then decides he doesn't know anything about it. Every month of her pregnancy maps cleanly onto a month of his freedom. The dates were never confusing. Only the denials were. And sit with the word reconnects. Because the circulating reports, the same ones the commentary pages have been passing around for months, describe this not as a first encounter, but as a continuation, reportedly a second pregnancy, by the same man. We flagged that earlier, and we'll flag it again in the frame section, but here in the timeline it does something specific. It deletes the random woman alibi entirely. The "I don't know anything about that" defense requires the audience to imagine a stranger materializing with a claim. The reported history describes the opposite, an established, repeated connection spanning his pre-custody life and his post-release freedom. Now, to be scrupulously fair, "I don't know anything about that" on a live stream, on the record, next to his mother, is not a courtroom statement, and people say evasive things on camera for 100 reasons, including legal advice we can't see. We're not convicting anybody of anything. We're noting that the public version of events and the reported private timeline do not rhyme, and that the gap between them is where this entire story lives. Then the gender reveal, a girl. Then the name plan. Karlissa Jr., then the phone call. Karlissa dialing her son on stream, asking about the baby. Hearing, "I don't know anything about that." And landing the charity case line with her grandson's voice on the other end. Then, August 21st, the response. Actually, hold on, back up, because this part is the part. Her son turns 5 on September 3rd. Cryptix Jr.'s birthday is September 3rd, same day. 2 half-siblings sharing a cake date in a family that can't share a group chat. I'm not saying the universe is petty, but the universe keeps a calendar. And every September 3rd for the rest of these kids' lives, somebody in that family is choosing which party gets the post. Let's stay on the name plan for one more beat, because Karlissa Jr. might be the single most analyzed underanalyzed detail of the year. On the surface, it's a tribute, naming a daughter after the grandmother who stepped up. Sweet. Now flip it. In a family where the grandmother is also, per her own Instagram bio, the CEO of a media network, naming the baby Karlissa Jr. does 2 things simultaneously. Publicly, it's affection. Structurally, it's a trademark filing. It binds the child's identity to the family branded birth, not to the father's stage name, not to the mother's line, to the network's founding name. And notice who reportedly endorsed and amplified that plan. The person whose name it is. Nobody else in this story has gotten their name on the next generation. Jaden's kids carry the Porter name. Krazian's son carries the Porter name. This one, per the plan discussed publicly, carries Karlissa's. Draw your own org chart. We did. And the September 3rd collision deserves its own 30 seconds of silence, because it's the kind of detail a screenwriter would cut for being too on the nose. 2 children, same father per the public record and the reporting respectively, sharing a birthday. In a family where birthday posts are not greetings, they're declarations of allegiance, engagement events, annual referendums on who's in and who's out. In a normal family, a shared birthday is a cute coincidence and a joint party. In this family, every September 3rd becomes an audit. Whose party gets the father's presents, if either? Which kid's cake gets posted to whose grid? Which grandmother appearance gets clipped? The kids didn't choose any of this, which is exactly why it lands heavy. They're going to grow up able to search every September 3rd of their childhoods and read the results. That archive is being written right now by adults for engagement. And notice the communication architecture holding all of this together. Or failing to. She's reportedly still blocked. So the ultrasound posts aren't content. They're mail. The grid is the only open channel between her and the father of her daughter. He won't text back, but he'll scroll past a sonogram like everybody else. She figured that out months ago and adjusted. That adjustment, treating her own feed as the only mailbox a man can't block, is the quietest power move in this whole story. This deserves the full expansion. Because once you see the grid as mailbox mechanic, you start seeing it everywhere in this ecosystem. Think about what a block actually does in 2026 for a family that lives on camera. It doesn't end communication. It privatizes the failure to communicate. He can refuse a channel while she retains the audience. Every ultrasound post she makes is doing triple duty. It's a medical update for her followers. It's a legal adjacent timestamp building the public record. And it's a letter she knows will be seen by the one person who won't answer letters. And he can't opt out of seeing it without opting out of the internet his entire business runs on. That's the trap of being a public figure who blocks someone. Your own visibility becomes their delivery guarantee. Meanwhile, and this is the part that should make the clout chaser reading sit down, she has reportedly never once leaked a private message, a call log, or a DM thread. The mailbox runs one direction. She sends. She does not publish what was sent to her. In an economy where screenshots are currency, the woman sitting on an unpublished archive and not spending it is either a saint, a strategist, or both. None of those 3 options match the frame she's been sold in. First lens, audio. Go back to that call and count the denials. I don't know anything about that shows up 3 separate times. Same tempo, same flat effect. That's not confusion. Confusion stumbles. Confusion asks a follow-up. That's a rehearsed position. A man who raps in hyperspecific detail about his own life suddenly developed amnesia on a direct question from his own mother, on a stream he knew was rolling. He wasn't lost. He was positioned. Somebody taught him that sentence, or he taught himself. Either way, it was loaded before the phone rang. Let's get more granular on the audio forensics, because the cadence is the tell. Genuine uncertainty has a signature. Hedges, qualifiers, pitch movement, a question returned. What do you mean? Why are you asking? What did she say? The call contains none of that. What it contains is a fixed string, delivered at a fixed tempo, 3 times, with no informational content added between repetitions. That's not a man searching his memory. That's a man running a macro. And consider the speaker. This is an artist whose entire musical identity is built on granular, name-dropping, date-specific autobiography, a discography full of exact places, exact people, exact beefs. The idea that this specific memory palace has one locked room, and it's this one, strains credulity past the breaking point. Now the fair counter. He was on a stream. He knew it, and anyone with a lawyer or a manager in their ear, and he is one of the loudest managers alive, has heard the phrase, say nothing specific, ever, on camera, 100 times. A rehearsed denial isn't proof of guilt. It can be proof of counsel. But that's the point. Whether the script came from a lawyer, a manager, a mother, or his own instincts, it was a script. And scripts are decisions. Somebody decided that "I don't know anything about that" was the optimal public position, months into a pregnancy, with the publicly locked due date. The audio doesn't tell us why. It tells us the position was prepared. Prepared positions have purposes. Hold that thought for the legal lens. Second lens, behavioral. Watch her block discipline. The chat rule all night was keep it cute. Mention what she hasn't spoken on, you're gone. And she enforced it live, mid-sentence, without breaking her fruit plate. Then she explained the whole philosophy unprompted. Once they see your weaknesses, that's when they're going to start attacking those weaknesses. That's not a girl lost in drama. That's somebody who studied this family's ecosystem from exile and built a defense for it. And the hernia bit? She keeps proving the pregnancy is physically real, on camera, because denial is this camp's favorite attack vector. They've spent months suggesting her belly is a prop. She's not showing her stomach for fun. She's entering evidence, one live stream exhibit at a time. The keep it cute protocol deserves a full paragraph of respect because moderation policy is strategy. Most people go live and let the chat set the agenda. The chat asks the toxic question, the streamer takes the bait, and the clip writes itself. She inverted the power structure. The stream had a published rule. The rule had enforcement, and enforcement happened in real time with zero emotional cost to her. Watch the tape again. The blocks aren't angry. They're administrative. That's what institutional knowledge looks like. She has watched from outside and then from inside exactly how this family's adversaries operate. Probe for the soft spot, clip the reaction, monetize the meltdown, repeat. Her entire streaming posture is a counterinsurgency against that cycle. Once they see your weaknesses, that's when they're going to start attacking those weaknesses. She didn't learn that from a self-help page. She learned it from watching what happened to every other woman who entered this orbit without a doctrine. The Timeline's complex and the Shade Room maintain are basically a museum of what happens when you don't have a keep it cute rule. She built one. That alone separates her from every prior chapter. And the evidence entry behavior, the belly, the hernia, the due date repetition, line it up with the denial campaign against her. For months, per the chatter that circulated across the commentary pages, the counter-narrative from the other camp's orbit was some version of fake pregnancy. Think about how corrosive that specific attack is. It doesn't just call her a liar. It erases the child preemptively, so that if the baby never gets acknowledged, the audience has already been primed to believe there was never anything to acknowledge. Her counter-strategy isn't arguing. Arguing with your belly is a prop is unwinnable. It's a conspiracy frame. And conspiracy frames eat denials for breakfast. Instead, she does the only thing that beats a conspiracy frame. Continuous, time-stamped, physical documentation. Every live stream is a dated exhibit. Every ultrasound post is a record entry. She's not oversharing. She's chain of custody her own pregnancy. Ask yourself who taught her she'd need to. That's not paranoia. That's discovery. Third lens, legal. This is the one that matters most. She said early on she'd take a DNA test, offered it, publicly, from day one, repeated the offer whenever it came up. Reportedly, Karlissa doesn't want one. Sit with that for a second. A private test ends the question in a week. A court-ordered test, which shows up automatically if she files for child support, something she's already floated, arrives on a judge's schedule, months out, on the record. Whoever controls the test controls the timeline, and the months in between are pure monetizable ambiguity. Allegedly, of course, but the incentives aren't subtle, and they don't point where the sainthood narrative says they should. Let's unpack the mechanics carefully, with the appropriate hedges bolted on, because this is where the story stops being family drama and starts being an incentive diagram. Paternity, legally, is a binary question with a binary instrument. A cheek swab, a lab, a result. Privately arranged. That process reportedly takes days to weeks and costs less than a decent ring light. So in a universe where everyone involved simply wanted the truth would already exist. It doesn't. So we ask the only honest question available. Who benefits from the question staying open? Start with her side. She offered the test publicly and early, per her own statements on live. People bluffing about paternity do not volunteer the one instrument that detonates bluffs. Could the offer be theater? In theory, anything can be theater. But theater offers come with escape hatches, conditions, delays. When he mans up qualifiers, hers, as stated publicly, was a standing offer with no expiry and no conditions. That's either the truth or the most committed long con in an ecosystem not known for long cons. Now the other side. Reportedly, and we stay in reportedly, because nobody's signed affidavit is in front of us. The resistance to a quick private test comes from the family side. Game that out. A private negative test ends the story and humiliates her. You'd think the camp calling it a lie would sprint toward that outcome. A private positive test ends the ambiguity and triggers the next phase. Acknowledgement, support, obligation, and the collapse of the charity case frame. Neither sprint is happening. The status quo being chosen instead is the one outcome with no result at all. Months of open question. Months of clips. Months of both frames alive monetization. Exactly the ambiguity economy we flagged in the frame section. Nobody in this ecosystem profits from a settled fact. And a court-ordered test, if a support filing eventually forces one, doesn't just produce an answer. It produces a timeline, a docket, a paper trail, and a date certain on which the gatekeeping premium we've been describing goes to zero. So ask it plainly. Who holds the pen on when the question gets answered? Not the woman offering the swab. The people declining it. Allegedly, reportedly, and unmistakably. Now look at how the same story got packaged 3 different ways. Because the packaging is its own confession. Frame 1, the celebration cut. Posts made the rounds calling her his pregnant girlfriend. Announcing another little princess on the way. Warm lighting, congratulations emojis, baby shower energy. This frame exists to keep the situation adorable. Adorable doesn't ask who filed what. Frame 2, the permanent alleged. 5 months in, belly on camera. Ultrasounds posted. Due date publicly consistent since spring. And certain pages still won't print her name without alleged duct tape to it. That word stopped being journalism a while ago. It's a fence they get to sit on, because alleged keeps both outcomes alive. And both outcomes keep the clicks coming. Nobody in this ecosystem profits from a settled fact. Frame 3. Fan camp logic. She trapped him. She wants in the circus so bad. Fine, Steelman it for one beat. She did say she's streaming more. She joked on live about following the money. And the rest of the family reportedly prints on Kick. Squint, and it looks like enrollment. Until you open the file. She offered a DNA test from day one. People running traps don't hand out receipts. Her due date hasn't moved once, which is more than his official story can say. Per the circulating reports, this is the second pregnancy by the same man. You don't trap somebody twice. At that point, it's a pattern he keeps walking into with his eyes open. And the woman saying, all you know is clips and the internet, doesn't sound like someone auditioning. She sounds like someone subpoenaed by the algorithm, showing up because she has to, not because she applied. Let's widen the lens on the frame industry itself, because these 3 frames aren't organic opinions. They're products, and they have a supply chain. The celebration cut monetizes warmth, congratulations engagement, shower speculation engagement, name guessing engagement. The alleged frame monetizes suspense. Is she isn't she engagement, the longest running and most renewable engagement format this family produces. The trap frame monetizes contempt. The audience gets a villain, the villain gets a comment section, the comment section gets ad impressions. 3 frames, 3 revenue lines, 1 woman. And here's the tell that the frames are products rather than conclusions. None of them update when the facts do. The due date has been stable since spring. The alleged frame didn't budge. The DNA offer has been standing for months. The trap frame didn't budge. The father's own documented silence is the one constant in the story, and no frame exists for that at all. When the packaging ignores the product, you're not watching journalism or even gossip. You're watching inventory management. One more note on the Steelman, because fairness is the whole game here. Yes, she's streaming more. Yes, she joked about the money. Both true, both on tape. Now apply the same standard to the other side of the ledger. The family she's allegedly trying to infiltrate has been streaming this exact storyline. Her pregnancy, her name, across multiple channels for months, reportedly generating the exact revenue they accuse her of chasing. If streaming your own life, While adjacent to this family is proof of mercenary intent, then every single person in this story is a mercenary, and the accusation loses all discriminatory power. You can't charge her for parking in a lot the other side built, paved, and charges admission to. The circus framing only works if you never look at who's been selling tickets the longest. Notice who escapes every frame, though. The man whose actual decision created all of it. The coverage fights over her intentions, the grandmother's cameras, the name on the onesie. His part gets summarized as still hasn't claimed a child. Like that's weather. It's not weather. It's the whole climate. Every storyline in this family bends around one unmade decision, and the framing industry built on top of it has a financial interest in that decision staying unmade. This is the oldest trick in the tabloid playbook, and it never stops working. So name it plainly. Agency relocation. Watch any century of this genre. The coverage always migrates to the women's motives, the women's bodies, the women's tone, while the man's choice gets reported as a standing condition, like altitude. He still hasn't claimed the child, gets printed the way you'd print the lease is month to month. A status, not a decision being actively remade every single day. Because that's what silence is here. Not an absence of decision, but a decision renewed daily, with compound interest. Every morning he doesn't claim her is a fresh choice, made by an adult, with full information. In a family where everyone gets paid to talk about everything except this. And the reason the frames never land on him isn't chivalry, and isn't oversight. It's that the other frames are renewable, and his frame is terminal. The day the coverage honestly centers his choice is the day the question gets asked directly enough that it has to be answered. Ambiguity is the asset. He's the vault it lives in. The mainstream read is warm and simple, messy situation. Grandma stepped up. At least somebody's acting like family. Cute story. Wrap it up, roll credits. Except that's not what's happening. Flip the board over. This isn't a grandmother rescuing a baby. It's a network acquiring a vertical. Karlissa's own Instagram bio introduces her as ICEO of Sixit Network. ICEO, listed in front of grandmother. In her own handwriting. And honestly, I went back and forth on whether the bio even belongs in this breakdown. No, it stays, because she wrote it herself, and under that structure the last few months produced something specific. The unborn child already carries a name honoring Karlissa. A delivery room camera plan is reportedly in motion, and a direct phone line to grandma is open. We talk on the phone, Rela said. She actually wants to be involved in my pregnancy. All of that before the father said one public word. In most families, a grandma that's involved is a blessing. In a family where grandma runs a media network, the blessing and the business plan share a desk. Let's be scrupulously fair here, because the counter read is genuinely available, and we'd be doing the same framing, since we just audited if we skipped it. Grandmothers step up when fathers falter. It happens in every community, every tax bracket, every family on earth. And when it happens offline, we call it love, and we're right to. Karlissa being on the phone with the mother of her grandchild is, in the vacuum of that single fact, a good thing. Full stop. The analysis doesn't start at the phone call. It starts at the sequencing and the instrumentation. The phone calls exist alongside, for the reporting and her own content. A camera plan for the delivery room. A name plan carrying her brand into the next generation. A public frame. Charity case. That devalues the child in the same weeks the involvement was being showcased, and a bio that ranks the executive title ahead of the family role. Any one of those is explainable. All of them on one desk is a structure. And structures deserve structural questions, even, especially, when the people inside them may also be experiencing real affection. Both things can be true. In this family, both things are always true. That's what makes the family a network. So rehear charity case. That wasn't an insult. That slipped out. That was the deal's terms escaping on a hot mic. In this economy, a grandchild is either an asset or a write-off. And Karlissa already made her call, on the record, months ago, before the son said a syllable. The charity framing does two jobs at once. It makes Blueface's absence look like a quirky personal choice instead of a failure, and it makes Karlissa's involvement read as sainthood instead of what it structurally is. The network keeping the next porter heir inside the network, on a contract of affection nobody had to sign. His silence, by the way, isn't a bug in that arrangement. It's the load-bearing wall. Every day he stays quiet. The Grandmother of the Year arc gains another episode, and Rela's leverage compounds, because she holds the one asset the whole operation needs and can't manufacture: the child herself. If he spoke tomorrow, the triangle collapses into a line, and lines don't stream well, which is exactly why the kitchen live stream landed like it did. Went straight to the shelter and picked up a charity case. Wasn't clapback for sport. It was a reminder that charity flows in both directions. And if she ever decides to renegotiate, the entire family programming slate feels it by Monday. She doesn't need to win the argument. She needs the argument to keep needing her. Look at who that describes on both sides. Let's trace the leverage curve, because it's the single most misunderstood dynamic in the comments. The popular read is that she has no leverage. She's blocked. She's unacknowledged. She's outside the gate. That read confuses access with power. Power in a content economy is irreplaceability. Every storyline this network runs requires raw material, and the raw material of the storyline, the pregnancy, the due date, the ultrasounds, the responses, the eventual birth, is physically located in exactly one person. They can stream about her. They cannot stream her without her. The other side owns distribution. She owns supply. And if you've taken even one economics class, you know what happens when supply is monopolized and distribution is commoditized. And distribution in 2026 is absolutely commoditized because she has her own channels, her own chat, her own gaspable moments, produced at kitchen table cost. The August 21st live was the proof of concept. No network, no production, no promotion, and it still out-traveled the content produced against her. That wasn't a woman venting. That was a supplier demonstrating that she can reach the market directly, whenever she chooses, at zero marginal cost. Everyone at that table understood what they were watching. That's why the response was so quiet from the other side. Silence from a family this loud is a market signal. The opposition, since we're here. Blueface can name every op in Los Angeles County, but not his daughter's due date. Karlissa put ICEO ahead of grandmother, and nobody in that household blinked. Whack 100, the loudest manager breathing, a man with an opinion on everything from labels to lunch, has been Libra quiet about this specific branch of the family tree, and his silence is the loudest data point on the board. This she wants in the circus. Crowd never asks why the circus keeps recruiting. And the two most famous women in this orbit built whole public chapters on the chaos. Meanwhile, the one asking for a paternity test and a phone call is somehow the controversial one. The circus sells tickets to the fights and then wonders why a woman with a sonogram keeps walking through the front gate. Stay on the Whack 100 data point, because it earns more than one line. This is a manager whose entire public brand is unfiltered commentary on his clients' relationships, on other artists, on the industry, on nothing at all. He has never needed an invitation to a microphone. And on this specific question, the pregnancy of a woman carrying his client's child, the storyline currently generating the family's most engaged content of the year, nothing. Now we don't know why. Could be legal counsel. A man managing a client less than a year out of custody has every professional reason to keep that client's name out of paternity discourse. And if that's the explanation, it's competent management. Could be strategy. Could be indifference. But map the selectivity. Loud on everything that costs nothing. Silent on the one thing that costs something. That selectivity is itself the data. In this ecosystem, you learn as much from who goes quiet as from who goes live. And right now, the quietest seats in the building all belong to the people with the most to lose from a settled answer. Draw your own conclusions. We've drawn ours and hedged them accordingly. And the two famous predecessors deserve a fair paragraph, because their chapters are the control group for this entire experiment. Per the timelines maintained by Complex and the Shade Room, the Krisian era and the Jaden era ran on maximum visibility. The fights, the reunions, the tattoos, the reality cameras, the whole pyrotechnic stack. That was the product, and nobody involved pretended otherwise. The chaos was the content, and the content paid. Now observe what the ecosystem did with that history. It converted woman engages publicly with this family into presumptive evidence of motive. For every woman forever. Which is how a woman whose entire public posture has been, here's my due date. Here's my offer of a DNA test. Please stop calling my daughter a charity case. gets filed under the same heading as eras that included televised altercations. The precedent didn't just set the audience's expectations. It lowered the evidentiary bar for judging her. She's not being measured against what she's done. She's being measured against the loudest chapters other people wrote. That's not a defense of anyone or an attack on anyone. It's just the record. The family didn't get a new baby mama. The network got a new subsidiary, and the subsidiary just found out she has voting shares. So where does this go? 3 roads, no labels. The first is the one already rolling downhill. By late December, expect a birth with cameras somewhere in the building, a name reveal that doubles as a brand reveal, and a father who acknowledges his daughter after the paperwork makes denial expensive, not a day before. Come spring, don't be shocked when a child support filing quietly converts her standing DNA offer into a court order, and the question a cheek swab could have settled in August gets answered by a clerk with a case number. The fake pregnancy crowd evaporates the hour the first baby photo loads. Watch them pretend they never typed it. Through all of it, Karlissa's arc stays intact because the arrangement was engineered to survive exactly this. The baby arrives, the content arrives, the test arrives, in that order, because that order is the only one where everyone currently at the table keeps their seat. That sequencing deserves one more pass, because the order of operations is the whole game. Baby first, content second, test third. Each stage gates the next. The birth converts the pregnancy from alleged to undeniable, which retires the fake belly frame permanently and transfers all remaining ambiguity onto a single question with a single instrument. The content window between birth and test is the harvest season, the name reveal, the first photos, the grandmother arc season finale. All of it monetizing the one stretch of timeline where the child is real, the audience is peak engaged, and the paperwork hasn't yet converted relationships into obligations. And then the test, whenever it arrives, by her filing, for the possibility she's already floated publicly, or by his camp's sudden discovery that certainty photographs well, closes the ambiguity economy for good. Everyone currently eating off the open question has a rational incentive to keep it open as long as possible and to be standing nearest the answer when it lands. Watch December through that lens. Not will he claim her. That's the fan question. The analyst's question is, who schedules the answer? The second road flips the table. Blueface is less than a year out of custody, rebuilding a catalog and an image at the same time. And men in that position eventually notice that claiming a daughter photographs better than denying one. Once he runs that math, and he will, because everybody around him gets paid when he runs it. Watch how fast the kick axis recalibrates. Watch the mentions. Watch who gets a verse and who gets a skit. If he claims the little girl early, the gatekeeper premium Karlissa's been collecting collapses overnight, and the she trapped him obituary gets written by the same accounts that authored it. The most predictable failure on the board belongs to whoever's still betting his silence appreciates in value. It doesn't. Silence in this family is a depreciating asset with a December 29th maturity date. Gaming this road out one step further, because it's the one the other side least wants discussed. An early claim doesn't just change the caption on the family photo. It restructures the supply chain we mapped earlier. Right now, the mother of the child has exactly one open channel into the family. The grandmother. Every piece of involvement, the phone calls, the delivery plan, the name, routes through that single hub, and hubs collect tolls. The day the father opens a direct channel, the hub becomes optional. The gatekeeper premium isn't a metaphor. It's the difference between being the only bridge and being one of two roads. Which means, and here's the retention hook we'll leave hanging, the person most publicly invested in this child's arrival is also the person with the most structural reason to keep the father at arm's length from it, right up until the moment claiming her becomes inevitable, at which point the smart play is to be the one who brokered the reunion. Watch for the pivot. If it comes, it will be framed as grace. It will actually be positioning. And it will work, because in this family it always works. And then the long view, 5 years out. Karlissa Jr. hits kindergarten alongside brothers and cousins who share birthdays, last names, and a grandmother with a content network. This becomes the first hip-hop family whose entire next generation was streamed from the ultrasound forward, and the residue lands on the whole culture. Every pregnancy adjacent to this ecosystem gets announced at 8 weeks, gender revealed, monetized, and narrated by grandma before the father's publicist finds out. The delivery room moved online in this era. Nobody's moving it back. The kids will grow up fluent in a language where live means both born and broadcast, and that sentence used to be a joke. And the cultural residue goes deeper than format. Think about what gets normalized when an entire generation of one famous family grows up as documented inventory. The consent question retires itself. None of these children will ever have been asked, and by the time they're old enough to ask why, the archive will be older than their memories. The sibling dynamics get a permanent public scoreboard. Whose birthday got the post, whose milestone got the stream, whose parent showed up on camera, and whose didn't. And the audience gets trained quietly, season by season, to treat the erasure of the line between family and programming as just the weather. This family didn't invent that trade. Reality television ran it for decades. But reality TV had producers, contracts, union rules, child labor laws in some states, and an off switch called cancellation. This version has a phone, a chat, and no season break. The Porter kids aren't a cast. Cast members get to quit. That's not an accusation aimed at any one person in this story. It's the honest shape of the era they're the flagship for. Somebody was going to be the first family streamed cradle to camera. It happens to be this one. The history books of internet culture will cite them either way. Somewhere in that future, a little girl pulls up an old clip and hears what her father said, or didn't. That replay is the one no network can edit. And that, ultimately, is why the August 21st Kitchen Live matters more than the clip it answered. The charity case line was a moment, cruel, loud, disposable. The response was a record, dated, calm, specific, and permanently parked on the internet her daughter will one day read end to end. 20 years from now, nobody's going to remember the chat's gasp. But the sentence, "Nobody told you to do that," will still be sitting there, next to the due date that never moved, next to the test offer that never expired, next to every ultrasound posted through a block. She wasn't streaming for us. She was building the version of the story that survives the algorithm, the one her daughter gets to find on her own terms, told in her mother's own voice, from her grandmother's kitchen, with the watermelon plate and the edges out of line, and not one syllable of it begging. Whatever the tests eventually say, whatever December brings, that archive is already won. You didn't get this read from a headline, and you won't get the next one anywhere else either. Like the video, subscribe to Fame Cryptix, ring the bell, so the December chapter finds you first. The birth is coming, the test is coming, and we'll be here when both land.